Hello, this is a quick message to everybody in the Fairmilehead and Colinton ward. In case you don't know, I'm standing as a candidate in the by-election. I have now spoken to almost 400 people on the doorstep, and the feedback that I'm getting is incredibly positive. So I'm also conscious that I'm not going to be able to speak to all 20,000 of the electorate. So I've done this. I'm doing this little video to quickly summarise the presentation, if you like, that I'm making on the doorstep. So if you could possibly share this with people in the ward, that would be absolutely wonderful. So, in a nutshell, I do ask people if they've, I introduce myself, apologise for interrupting, and ask them if they've received my letter. And a surprising number of people have read it cover to cover. I do know it's just under 2,000 words. So it's really quite understandable that most people haven't read it, but I would really inspire you to do so. So in a nutshell, let me tell you what it's all about, okay? It's about turning politics on its head. Touch wood, I do think that I've identified the linchpin flaw in the current system of politics, which is causing so many people so much unhappiness with their politicians. So you'll be the judge of that in a moment. The second thing is that I believe that I've identified a potential solution. So time will tell, but if there's a 10% chance of this solution being a winner, then it will transform democracy and politics in the UK. Now, the real reason I'm here is that there's an actual opportunity that exists in the Scottish Parliament elections, which is totally unique in the whole world. There's nowhere else in the world that has the same political system of election that we have for the Scottish Parliament elections, and because of that, I've identified an incredible opportunity, which is a winner, and means that there's actually a way of actually implementing my solution in Scotland, which wouldn't exist, in England for sure, and almost everywhere else. Okay, so I'll run through these three things really quickly. The first thing, in terms of the flaw, right? The problem is that the parties are just far too large, yeah? And they're trying to control far too many thousands of people. And they're using a top-down control structure, which is becoming over time more and more autocratic. So, evidenced by the fact that, for example, the Labour Party within a month of the general election suspended 7 MPs at once, which is the largest number of MPs to ever be suspended at once. So it's never been this bad. And ironically, for voting for what was a Labour position, but that's a by the by. So that's the flaw. The parties are too large, and they're using a top-down control structure. So our solution is to have a small party, right? So we started, and what I want is to inspire, the creation of dozens of new small parties, if this works. Instead of having a top-down control structure, we'll have a bottom-up control structure, which means that the members have all the power in the party. So the members of the Fairmilehead and Colinton ward have elected to choose me to stand as a candidate, and that will be the same for future elections. And also, when it comes to voting at what one's selected as a councillor or an MSP, the elected representatives will take instructions from the members of the party, Edinburgh People, in terms of how to vote. Okay, so that's the solution. Okay, if it turns out to be a winner, well, my prediction is that in 15 years' time, elections in Edinburgh will be fought between 4 or 5 small local regional parties who all have their respective membership guiding them in terms of how to vote, and that the large parties will have been kicked into touch. Let's see, right? Let's see if that happens. So in terms of, like I said, because there's an actual opportunity to make this happen, this is why I'm here, and it hinges on the Scottish Parliament election system, and it's an incredible symbiosis that I've come up with the idea in Scotland, and Scotland just happens to be pretty much the only place in the world where we can attempt to make this change happen. So specifically, what it is that usually within an election, it's one man, one vote, or one person, one vote, and however, with the Scottish Parliament elections, it's one person, 2 votes, and you actually get to choose 2 MSPs. You choose one MSP through the first past the post system, which is a named individual, and that MSP is going to represent you directly in your constituency. Okay, but then you also use the list, and the list system selects a further 7 MSPs which are chosen for the region, and your vote will become attributed to one of the 7 MSPs. So if your chosen candidate for the first past the post system is elected, then you will choose 2 MSPs. Okay, so that's unique in the whole world, to my knowledge, and the significance of that is that 80% of what people are doing when they go to the polling booth is they are choosing their constituency MSP. So they may choose, for example, for argument's sake, the Labour candidate, and then when it comes to putting the numbers down on the list, they'll quite likely put number 1 against Labour and then number 2 against Lib Dem or Green or whatever, okay, etc. Yeah. But the key thing is that 80% of what they really want to be doing is choosing their constituency MSP through the first past the post system. And this is where the opportunity lies, because I have been in marketing for 3 decades. And what I know is that if you try and change people's behaviour too much, then you'll change nothing at all. But if you try and change their behaviour a little bit, then you can change quite a lot, okay? So I like to let people know that I do believe that if I can get round enough people, based on the almost 400 people that I've spoken to, it looks to me that I'm on target to get more votes than the Greens. Yeah, we'll see in 2 weeks' time. So the significance of that is that we'll have had a meteoric rise compared to the Greens over the last 3 decades, okay? And then I want to use that as a springboard to prepare for the Scottish Parliament elections. So the name of the party, Edinburgh People, will be changed to Edinburgh and Lothians People, so that we can be on the Lothians list for the Scottish Parliament elections. And then I want to also inspire the creation of a further 7 regional political parties throughout Scotland. So, for example, South Scotland People, North East Scotland People, Highlands and Islands People, etc. And for each region, we initially just need 3 office bearers to come forward as leader, treasurer and secretary to lodge the parties and register them with the Electoral Commission. And then for May 2026, we'll have 24 candidates 3 on each list from each of the 8 different parties for the 8 different regions. And the message to the electorate is going to be so appealing, because we're not going to try and change what people do very much. What we're going to say is that here are 8 new political parties for you to vote for through the list system. Yeah. However, if you've always voted Labour or you've always voted SNP, etc., and you want to carry on doing that, well then please do just carry on doing that, but for your constituency MSP, who's going to represent you directly, which is 80% of what people are doing in any case. And so we're not trying to change much at all. And what we're going to say is that if people like the idea of doing just that, but also like the idea of electing 8 members of the general public, average Joes like myself, to Hollywood Parliament, right? So that as MSPs, they are free to scream and shout about whatever they want to scream and shout about without any fear of any reprisal from a top-down autocratic party that is going to maybe destroy their career or suspend them from the party. And most importantly, that these MSPs will be able to scream and shout about whatever their local members want them to scream and shout about. And the thing is, I don't know what you think, but what is not to like about that? I've really not found anyone who's arguing about it. So the beauty is the key thing, the clincher is that we only need 6% of Scotland to like the idea of being able to, on the one hand, continue voting how they've always continued to vote for their constituency MSP, and at the same time that they can elect 8 members of the general public. We only need 6% of Scotland to see value in that, and we will have 8 MSPs in the Scottish Parliament in May 2026. If 12% were to feel like this, then we would have 16. The Greens, for example, did get around about 12% of the vote in the Lothian region at the last Scottish Parliament elections. And so they were awarded 2 MSPs just from the Lothians region. So there you go. That's the opportunity, and hopefully you'll see that it is realistic. I'm going to try and persuade the members of Edinburgh and Lothians people to select me to be number 1 on the list. And so, according to this plan, then I will then become elected as an MSP for the Lothian region. So please do vote for me in this by-election. In terms of what will happen after, my prediction is that if I or someone else, were to become elected as MSP, then within a couple of months, my prediction is that we will have over 1,000 new members joining Edinburgh and Lothians people, people who've obviously voted for us, but also people who want to influence how I or someone else votes in Hollywood Parliament. Now that's going to provide an incredible foundation for what's going to happen 12 months later, which is in May 2027 we have the full council elections, and so we have 2.5 years from now to grow the awareness of Edinburgh and Lothians people, to grow the membership, and the opportunity that we have then is that we only need to come 3rd in 17 wards, and and we will have 17 councillors in the city chambers. And because we'll have taken those 17 seats away from the other 5 established parties, then we will, overnight, become the largest party in the city chambers. And we will have the opportunity to form the next administration in coalition with, 1 or 2 other parties, as is the case at the moment, because the current administration is Labour-led, but it's a coalition between Labour, Conservative and Lib Dem. It's a unionist coalition in opposition to the SNP, who actually is the largest party at the moment with 18 councillors. So there you have it. That's the plan, okay? The final thing is that there's a unique way where you can tactically vote in the by-election, right? So anyone who's thinking of voting Conservative, Lib Dem, Labour or SNP in the by-election in Fairmilehead and Colinton, what you can do is, I'm highly unlikely to get more votes than any of those 4 candidates. So what you can do is you can put me down as number 1 on the list as a protest vote, if you like, to all the 4 major parties, essentially asking them to get their democratic house in order and letting them know that you are aware that there is a new form of democratic representation that is coming to potentially pull the rugs from under all of their feet, So please do vote for me number 1, and then, vote Lib Dem, for example, number 2, because your vote will automatically be transferred to your second preference, as long as I get fewer votes than them, which is, at this stage, probably very likely. So there you have it, okay? Feel free to send me an email, info@edinburghpeople.org. I'm checking those emails every evening, and spread the word and tell all your neighbours in Fairmilehead and Colinton about this fantastic new opportunity. Thank you for listening.